The skyscraper didn't welcome her. Its walls were cold, all chrome and glass, reflecting the kind of people who had never missed a meal, never been called a case number, never been told they were statistically unlikely to succeed. Maya Brooks stood at the building's entrance for 3 full minutes, pretending to check her phone, pretending not to feel the weight of eyes watching her from behind the reception desk. Her coat was too worn for this place, her shoes comfortable. Faded didn't click against the marble like the stilettos of the other applicants. She clutched her resume like a passport and told herself it was just a meeting, nothing more. But inside, her heart drummed like she was being summoned to judgment. They ushered her into a glass-walled room on the 35th floor, where 3 men and 1 woman sat behind laptops, not looking up as she entered. The company name Nouveau Logic was etched into the wall behind them, like gospel. The man in the center, David Kessler, head of machine learning, tilted his head after a too long silence. "Your background's non-traditional." Maya nodded once. "I studied statistics at Howard, then self-taught for 6 years. Freelanced on government projects. No corporate experience." "No," she said evenly. "Just systems that affect real people." He smirked. "We're trying to improve our predictive AI for social service applications. Our algorithm's been flagging anomalies in grant distributions. You'd be auditing that." Another panelist interjected. "Explain how you'd approach it without full data access." Maya walked to the whiteboard. They didn't stop her. She uncapped the pen and began writing in silence. For 2 minutes, the room heard only the squeak of ink against gloss. Matrices, patterns, discrepancy filters, outlier probability stacks. She turned. "The issue isn't the code. It's the training data. Your AI isn't malfunctioning. It's reflecting the historical bias it's been fed." Kessler blinked. "And how do you propose to correct history?" "You don't," Maya said. "You confront it." Silence. Then one of them, the woman this time, murmured, "You're hired. 6-month contract. Start Monday." Maya nodded, trying not to exhale too deeply. Outside the building, the sun had already begun to set. She didn't go home. Instead, she took the long route past the old neighborhood where her foster home once stood. Boarded windows, cracks in the sidewalk, the places the algorithm would likely flag high risk. Places like her. That night, long after the last email pinged her inbox with onboarding paperwork, Maya sat alone on the floor of her apartment, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She didn't know yet what she would find, only that something in her gut whispered, "It's not just a bug." And when she finally got access to the system's backend server, that was when she would first ask the question that would change everything. Why is the algorithm lying? The first time Maya entered the server room, she expected blinking lights and silent machines. She didn't expect to feel like she'd stepped inside a living thing. The air was cold artificial, humming with a low-frequency buzz that seemed to settle in her bones. Floor tiles gleamed under white fluorescence. Rows of black server racks stretched into the distance like soldiers standing at attention, each one housing a piece of the algorithm she had been hired to audit. This wasn't just data. This was the mind of the machine. Maya tapped her badge. Access granted. A small victory, one she knew could be revoked at any moment. She walked slowly between the rows, past the quiet hum of computation and memory, until she reached the terminal marked Node 473H. The anomaly cluster, they'd called it. Just noise, some said. Probably a statistical glitch. But her instincts whispered otherwise. She connected her drive, pulled up the logs, and began sifting through thousands of flagged decisions cases where the AI had recommended denying housing assistance, skipping medical screenings, lowering priority for school programs. There were patterns, zip codes, ethnic markers, family composition. The algorithm wasn't making mistakes, it was making choices. Choices that reflected an invisible hand, pushing the vulnerable further to the edge. She scrolled faster, then stopped cold. A file name appeared on the screen. Brooks M0831F. Her breath caught. Her own name. A scan of her childhood welfare case from 15 years ago flagged for long-term dependency risk. She hadn't seen that file since she aged out of the system, and yet here it was, sitting quietly inside the very code she was hired to evaluate. She clicked into it. Her intake notes. Behavioral warnings. Psychological assessments by people who never asked her a single question. And then, the line that burned into her mind. Unlikely to become a productive adult. Her chest tightened. The past had followed her here, embedded in silicon, still whispering the same verdict. She closed the file, not because she was done, but because she couldn't let it see her cry. Instead, she opened the logs again. She filtered by cases flagged as non-compliant or unsuitable for investment. Her eyes scanned them one by one. Latasha, age 10, denied a place in a gifted science program. Raphael, age 7, removed from his after-school speech therapy due to low improvement projections. Dondre, age 6, flagged as a future behavioral risk based solely on his zip code and absentee father. It was all there, dressed in percentages and probabilities, but hiding something ugly. Maya leaned in close to the screen and whispered it like a prayer. Why is the algorithm lying? And for a moment, the server room felt even colder, because she knew now this wasn't just about bad code. It was about a system that had learned to profile, to exclude, to predict failure, and no one had bothered to stop it. Until now. Maya didn't sleep that night. She lay on her mattress, eyes wide open, listening to the distant city sounds outside her window sirens. Buses, the quiet buzz of life carrying on. But inside her mind, the server room never stopped humming. The case files haunted her, not because they were flawed, but because they were familiar. Latasha, Raphael, Dondre. Every one of them a mirror, not in name, but in story. Maya had been just like them, once flagged, filtered, predicted into invisibility. She remembered the cold social worker's desk, the way people looked past her in group homes, the endless reports filled with observations but no understanding. And now, here it was again. An algorithm pretending to be objective, but built on the same old fears. Maya reached for the box under her bed. The only thing she had kept from her past, a manila folder with half-torn documents, a faded photo of her at age 6, and the case summary she had once stolen from a foster office before disappearing into the system. Her file. She unfolded it slowly, rereading it for the 100th time. Low resilience, history of withdrawal, prone to defiance, lacks long-term developmental potential. A quiet fury rose in her chest. She remembered that girl, silent, stubborn, observant, the one who used to sneak into the school computer lab just to open a spreadsheet and pretend it made sense, the one who taught herself linear algebra from a discarded textbook, the one no one believed in. And now, all these years later, she was watching other children be sentenced the same way by a machine that learned from the same blind eyes. It wasn't just the algorithm lying. It was the world that trained it to. The next morning, Maya walked into the office early before the team arrived, before anyone could ask why she looked like she hadn't slept. She skipped the elevator and took the stairs to the basement, back to the server room. She pulled up another batch of flag cases and cross-referenced them with public school records. The pattern deepened. Black and brown children, poor families, single parents. Anyone outside the algorithm's preferred mold of predictable success was pushed quietly out of the way. She pulled up the training data logs. They were scrubbed, sanitized. No identifiers, but she could still trace the patterns. Generational bias built right into the code, masked by statistical models no one bothered to audit properly. No one. Until her. Maya sat back in the chair, staring at the cascade of numbers on the screen. It wasn't just injustice, it was automation. A machine that could make decisions in milliseconds, harming lives without ever raising its voice. She whispered it again, softer this time, like a truth she wasn't ready to accept. This is what they think of us. Not just her, not just the kids. All of them. And somewhere in that cold server room, surrounded by silent racks of data, she made a quiet vow she wouldn't just audit this algorithm. She would expose it, even if it meant burning everything down. The next night, Maya stayed later than usual. The building emptied around her. Meetings faded, lights dimmed. The hum of corporate ambition slowly gave way to silence. It was the only time she felt safe digging deeper when no one else was watching. She returned to the server room like it was a chapel. Data, in her hands, was scripture, except this scripture was corrupt. Still, she read it line by line. Then she heard it, a slow, measured cough behind her. She froze. "Didn't mean to startle you," a voice said gently. "I usually come through the back stairwell." Maya turned, startled. It was the janitor, mid-50s, maybe older. Slouched posture, faded gray jumpsuit with a patch that read, Henry. He carried a mop and a rolling bin, but what struck her wasn't his tools. It was the fact that he wasn't surprised to see her here. "I didn't think anyone else had access down here," she said. "I don't," he replied with a shrug, "but I've got keys no one notices." She studied him cautiously. "You always clean the servers." "No," he said, setting the mop down. "I used to build them." That made her pause. Henry didn't elaborate. He moved slowly, pulling out a folding chair from behind a utility door and sitting down like he had done it every night for years. "I've seen you," he added, pacing, digging. "You're not just checking logs." She hesitated, uncertain. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not here to report you. I've been waiting for someone like you to come along." "What do you mean?" Henry leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "This place, it's got a rhythm, looks clean, operates smooth, but underneath it's rotting. You've seen it, haven't you? The way the machine makes decisions that hurt the same kind of kids." Over and over again, Maya's chest tightened. "You know about the bias. I know about everything they don't want you to ask about," he said calmly. "I tried once, spoke up when I was still in education research. Pointed out that early childhood models were skewed against black boys. Got pushed out. They buried my work and sent me a letter thanking me for my service." He tapped his temple. "But I remember it all." Maya sat down slowly. The hum of the servers filled the silence between them. "You have access to the maintenance channels, don't you?" she asked. Henry smiled. "And you have access to the algorithm. Looks like we're both holding keys." They didn't say much more that night, but something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Two people who had once been told to sit quietly, now sitting in the underbelly of a system that had forgotten them. Before leaving, Henry paused at the door. "If you're gonna tear this thing down," he said without looking back, "you'll need more than code. You'll need truth, the kind that makes people uncomfortable." Maya didn't reply, but as the door clicked shut behind him, she realized she didn't feel alone anymore. And in the cold hum of the server room, something began to shift, not just in the system, but in her resolve. She would keep going, because now she had someone who believed her, and because the machine was still lying. By week 3, Maya had compiled a full report. It was meticulous, dozens of flagged cases, side by side with real-life outcomes. Predictive scores contrasted with school grades, medical charts, and family histories. The algorithm wasn't just wrong, it was consistently, systematically wrong, in one direction, always downward, always against the same groups. She spent 2 nights formatting the evidence into a clean presentation. No anger, no rhetoric, just numbers, facts, proof. And then she sent the calendar invite, subject urgent algorithmic discrepancies, internal review, attendees Kessler, Lynn, Rhodes, legal, Maya Brooks. They accepted. She felt a flicker of hope. The conference room on the 21st floor had no windows, just a long table, a muted monitor, and the same polished silence as every other meeting room in the building. She stood at the head, her laptop connected. Thanks for taking the time. What I've found, what I'm still uncovering, goes beyond statistical noise. She began calmly, walking them through patterns. The denial rates for low-income families, the mislabeling of gifted children as at risk, the underreporting of success metrics in Black and Latino students. As she spoke, some glanced at their watches, others exchanged unreadable looks, but she kept going. And then there's this. Maya clicked to the final slide. Her case file, her childhood, her predicted failure, and yet, she said, voice quiet but steady, I'm here, writing your code, cleaning your mess. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Kessler leaned back, arms crossed. Maya, what exactly are you proposing we do? Rebuild the model, she said. Retrain it with better data, human data, ethical input, oversight, equity controls. He cut her off. That's not scalable. What's not scalable is letting a machine decide a child's worth based on a zip code, she snapped. The woman from legal spoke next. Calm, flat. Your analysis is compelling, but from a liability standpoint, admitting bias could expose the company to lawsuits, billions in funding right on that system. Maya's heart dropped. So we just let it keep hurting people. There's no proof it's hurting anyone, said another voice. You saw the names, we saw correlations, Kessler interrupted, adjusting his cufflinks. Not causation. And then he delivered the line that would stay with her for weeks. We're a tech company, Maya, not a social service. That was it. Meeting adjourned. No decisions made. No action promised. Just a pat on the back and a warning look. As she gathered her laptop, one of the junior analysts, quiet, fresh out of grad school, avoided her eyes. But as he passed, he slipped a folded note into her hand. She waited until she was alone to open it. They're scrubbing logs. Start with server cache on node 901A. Tonight, Jay. Her stomach turned. They weren't just ignoring the problem. They were covering it up. That night, Maya walked back into the server room angrier, more focused than ever. Henry was waiting, already unlocking a cabinet she hadn't even noticed before. They're trying to erase it, she said. They always do, he replied. But we're faster. The machine kept humming. The lights blinked in steady rhythm. But Maya no longer felt like she was inside a system. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a battlefield, and she was ready for war. The system wasn't just broken. It had already broken people. Maya knew the evidence she'd uncovered wasn't enough. Not anymore. Numbers could be debated. Models could be dismissed. But stories, real lives. They cut deeper. So she stepped outside the sterile walls of Nouveau Logic for the first time since she was hired and walked into the city. She didn't have an address, just a name she had found in a buried file. Ms. Camila Alvarez, an elementary school teacher who had submitted a formal appeal 2 years ago after her students were flagged by the AI's school performance predictor. Her appeal was ignored. The algorithm stood, but Maya found her. The school was in a forgotten corner of the city, cracked pavement, chain-link fences, faded murals painted by kids who probably didn't live there anymore. Maya waited outside the building until dismissal, then watched as Ms. Alvarez exited carrying a canvas tote stuffed with lesson plans, water bottles, and crumpled art projects. She was in her early 40s, sharp eyes, tired posture. But when Maya introduced herself and explained why she was there, Ms. Alvarez's face changed instantly. Finally, she whispered, "Someone from inside is asking." They sat in a quiet classroom while the janitor vacuumed hallways. Ms. Alvarez opened a drawer and pulled out a red folder, thick with paper. "Here," she said, "this is Elijah's file, one of the smartest kids I've ever met. Quiet, kind, builds solar circuits from old calculators. But the system flagged him as developmentally behind, labeled him as a resource burden." Maya flipped through the documents. The AI scores were low, absurdly low. Yet every teacher report was glowing. It didn't make sense. The system said he wouldn't respond to STEM enrichment, Miss Alvarez said bitterly. So his after-school robotics slot was given to a kid with a higher probability score. That child dropped out a month later. Elijah watched from the hallway every day. Maya closed the folder, heart heavy. It wasn't just him. The teacher continued. There were dozens, all with dreams the algorithm couldn't see. Maya's voice shook slightly. "Why didn't anyone escalate this? I tried." Ms. Alvarez said, "We all did. But no one listens to public school teachers, especially not ones from this zip code." Outside, kids screamed with laughter on the playground, their innocence unknowing. Maya looked at the file again, her fingers tracing the printed algorithm score as if trying to rewrite it with her hands. "Do you know where Elijah is now?" she asked. Ms. Alvarez nodded. "Still here, still waiting for someone to see him." Maya stood up. "I'd like to meet him." Later that evening, they walked to a small apartment complex 5 blocks away. The hallway smelled of detergent and childhood. Ms. Alvarez knocked gently, and a woman in scrubs answered the door. Elijah's mother, tired from her shift but polite. She called him out, and there he was, a small boy with big eyes and a shy nod. In his hands, he held a broken remote control car he was trying to rewire into a tiny flashlight. "Hi," Maya said, kneeling down. "Can I ask you something?" Elijah looked up. "Sure. If someone gave you all the tools and time you needed, what would you build?" The boy thought for a moment. "A machine that finds kids who are lonely and makes them feel safe." Maya felt her throat tighten. She knew in that moment that Elijah wasn't just a case file. He was proof, living, breathing, irrefutable proof that the algorithm was blind and the consequences were real. As they left, Ms. Alvarez turned to her. "You're going back, aren't you?" Maya nodded. "But I'm not going back as a coder anymore." Then what Maya looked out at the city, its lights, its noise, its ghosts, and answered quietly. As a witness, she couldn't sleep. Not after Elijah. Not after hearing that small voice say he wanted to build a machine to find lonely kids because deep down, he was one of them. Maya sat at her kitchen table until dawn, the red folder from Ms. Alvarez open in front of her. She hadn't taken it with permission. Not really, but she couldn't let it go. She booted up her laptop and did what she had always done when the world stopped making sense. She searched for answers in the code. This time, she wasn't just looking at outputs. She traced back the inputs, the architecture, the weighted variables. And then, buried inside a developer's sandbox, she found Elijah's full digital profile, a living file, still updating, not just test scores or behavioral tags, but deeper markers, family history, address changes, missed doctor appointments, absence records, all pulled from external data streams the algorithm was quietly scraping. The AI had assigned him a life trajectory index. Maya stared at the screen. Risk level high, projected outcome dependent, long-term value limited. It hit her like a punch to the chest. This boy, this child with circuits in his pocket and kindness in his hands, branded by a machine as limited. She scrolled further and found the hidden logic tree. It broke down how his trajectory had been calculated. Born in a low-income zip code, 7 single-mother working service job, 5 attended under-resourced school, 4 missed 2 vaccinations, 3 below-average standardized tests in 2nd grade, 6 Hispanic surname, statistically lower graduation rate, 4. The deductions stacked like weights around his future. Maya sat back, stunned. The machine wasn't malfunctioning. It was functioning perfectly according to the values it had been trained on. It didn't hate kids like Elijah. It simply didn't see them as worth the investment. And then, slowly, painfully, she realized something even worse. It wasn't just an algorithm. It was a verdict. Automated, sanitized, hidden behind technical terms and clean dashboards. Maya stared at the blinking cursor on Elijah's file. The system didn't just predict he would fail. It had ensured it by quietly excluding him from opportunity, pulling resources before he had a chance to prove it wrong. And he wasn't the only one. She ran a batch query through the sandbox. Within minutes, she had hundreds of profiles like his, hundreds of brilliant, hurting, overlooked children the system had already decided would not matter. She remembered what Henry had told her. You're not fixing a glitch. You're standing in a graveyard. And now she could see the headstones, all digital, all silent. Maya closed her laptop, her face numb, but something inside her had shifted. This wasn't about algorithms anymore. This was about children, futures, whole communities being erased one data point at a time. And for the first time since this all began, she didn't feel like an analyst or a whistleblower or even a witness. She felt like a survivor staring back at the storm she had barely escaped. Not this time, she whispered. Then she opened her journal and wrote 3 names, Elijah, Latasha, herself. This wasn't just personal. It was war. The warning came quietly. No emails, no phone calls, just a message blinking red on her login screen. Your account will be suspended pending review. Maya sat frozen. The screen flickered. Access denied. They were erasing her. The same system she had sworn to expose was turning its gaze on her. At first, she thought it was a mistake, a glitch. But her HR contact called the next morning, cold and businesslike. Maya, we've received some concerns about your background. Given your recent activities, we need to pause your contract for investigation. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't about concerns. It was retaliation. She had become a threat. Files from her past the juvenile records, therapy notes, foster care assessments were pulled up, digitized, weaponized against her. The company flagged her as unstable, unreliable, a liability. Emails from supervisors questioned her judgment. Internal chat speculated whether she was mentally fit for the project. Her face, her history, her life, it was all being rewritten by those who wanted her silent. She tried to fight back. She sent formal appeals, demanded transparency, requested evidence, but the system was too fast, too powerful. Her digital identity was disappearing. She couldn't access her workspace. Her code repositories were locked. Her emails bounced. Her badges failed to scan. She was being deleted, piece by piece. In the quiet of her apartment, Maya stared at the blank screen of her laptop. She had thought the hardest part was uncovering the truth. She was wrong. The hardest part was surviving the machine's attempt to erase her. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Don't give up. You're not alone. Meet me tonight. She hesitated, then replied where a single word came back. Warehouse. Later that night, heart pounding, Maya slipped into the shadows of the city. Inside the dimly lit space, she found Henry waiting, surrounded by a cluster of people she hadn't met before. "Welcome to the resistance," he said quietly. There were coders, activists, former employees, people who had all been pushed out or silenced by the system. They handed her a USB drive. "Backup," Henry explained. "Everything you need to keep fighting." Maya took it, feeling the weight of hope in her hands. She realized then that erasure was only a tool, and if they thought deleting her would stop the truth, they hadn't met the right people yet. The machine might try to silence her, but she was learning to speak louder. The article went live just past midnight. It was anonymous, crafted carefully, backed by evidence and raw stories from people Maya had met through Henry's network. Titled "The Algorithm That Hates Children," it laid bare everything: data biases, real lives crushed by cold code, and the silent complicity of the tech giant. Within hours, it exploded across social media, blogs, and news outlets. The public outcry was immediate. Parents shared their stories of children denied aid. Teachers echoed Ms. Alvarez's frustration. Advocacy groups demanded hearings. Hashtags trended: "Algorithm bias," "Justice for Elijah," "Data for Humanity." Inside Nuva Logic, panic set in. Executives held emergency meetings. PR teams scrambled to spin the narrative. Internal memos warned employees not to speak to the press. But the fire couldn't be contained. Journalists called Maya's phone, though she never answered. Anonymous tips from her new allies flooded inboxes of regulators and lawmakers. The company's stock wavered. Investors demanded explanations. And amid the storm, Maya watched quietly, knowing the fight had finally left the shadows. Yet the most surprising message came not from the public, but from within the company itself. A carefully worded email from Kessler appeared in her locked inbox. "Meet me. We need to talk." The invitation was both a threat and a chance. Maya didn't know if it was a trap or an olive branch, but she knew one thing. The machine was listening, and this time, she had made it roar. The conference room was colder than before. Maya walked in, not as the nervous outsider, but as the woman who had ignited a fire impossible to ignore. Kessler waited, surrounded by new faces: investors, legal advisors, and executives desperate for control. His eyes met hers, a mix of challenge and something else she couldn't place. "You made this personal," he said quietly. "I did," Maya replied, "because it is personal. This algorithm decided my fate once, and it's deciding the fate of children like Elijah every day." He tapped his fingers on the table. "You want to fix a system that's bigger than any of us? You want to rewrite history?" "No," she said firmly. "I want to face it, to change it." Then, without hesitation, she opened her laptop and projected a single slide. The flagged report from her childhood, the one the system had used to predict she would fail. The room fell silent. She read aloud the cold words. The judgment written by faceless algorithms years ago, unlikely to become a productive adult. And yet, here I am, Maya said, working to make sure that no other child is written off before they even have a chance. Kessler looked away, swallowing hard. Maybe the problem isn't the technology, she continued, but the people who built it without questioning the stories they believed. The investors shifted uneasily. Transparency, human oversight, community input. Maya outlined, we need to build a system that learns from humanity, not erases it. The room was quiet, but the air had shifted. For the first time, they were forced to look at the mirror Maya held up, reflecting not just lines of code, but lives, and somewhere deep inside. Maya knew that the fight had moved beyond her. It was now about changing the narrative, one child at a time. The offer came wrapped in cautious optimism and guarded hope. Maya sat across from a new group of faces, ethical investors, social reform advocates, and a few hesitant executives willing to admit the system had failed. They proposed a project rebuild the algorithm from the ground up, with transparency, accountability, and a commitment to equity. You'll lead the initiative, one said, with full autonomy, no interference. Maya studied the faces, searching for hidden motives. But after everything, this felt different, like a chance to rewrite not just code, but the future. Henry joined as co-director, bringing his experience and quiet wisdom. Ms. Alvarez offered community insights and educator perspectives. Elijah became the project's first real-world test case, a symbol of what the system should uplift, not bury. The team worked long hours, often late into the night. They collected new data, not just statistics, but stories, personal histories, community voices. They built algorithms that flagged needs instead of risks, that recommended support instead of exclusion. Mistakes were made, old habits crept in, but they kept refining, learning, listening. Months turned into years, and slowly, the world began to notice. Humankind, the new system, launched quietly but powerfully, prioritizing care, equity, and opportunity. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. Maya often walked through the server room, now filled with vibrant posters and photographs of children who had been given a second chance. She thought of Elijah building his circuits, of Miss Alvarez fighting for her students, and of Henry's steady presence in the shadows. And most of all, she thought of herself, a girl once written off by a cold machine, and now writing a new story for generations to come. Years later, Maya stood once again inside the server room, but this time, the space felt different, not cold, not distant, but alive. She traced her fingers along the smooth black racks, each one humming with new purpose. Behind the blinking lights and endless lines of code, something had changed. The algorithm no longer whispered judgments. It listened. Humankind was more than a system, it was a promise. A promise that data could serve people, not silence them. Maya's eyes found the terminal she had first questioned so many years ago. She logged in, and as the dashboard loaded, she whispered softly, "Why is the algorithm lying?" A gentle prompt appeared. "I'm not lying anymore. I'm learning." A small smile touched her lips. Behind the machine was now a different kind of code, one written with empathy, transparency, and humanity. Maya took a deep breath and stepped out of the server room into the sunlight. The city was still full of challenges, but now it held hope, because sometimes the smallest line of code could rewrite the future of 1,000 lives.